Maria Collins, you worthless piece of trash. Get up here and solve this equation since you think you're so smart. The chalk dust floating in the afternoon light couldn't hide the cruel satisfaction in Jessica Park's voice as she stood at the front of the classroom, arms crossed, designer handbag hanging from her shoulder like a weapon. Maria's hands trembled as she gripped her cracked phone, the screen showing the group message that had arrived 30 seconds ago. Reunion Planning Committee has officially decided. We're inviting everyone from our graduating class. Even the charity cases. Can't wait to see how our little mouse has been surviving in the real world. This is going to be hilarious. Face with tears of joy. The message thread exploded with laughing emojis and cruel comments, each notification another dagger to her chest. But what destroyed her wasn't the cruelty. It was the realization that 5 years later, they still saw her as nothing. Maria's reflection stared back from her phone screen, and for a moment she saw herself as they did, small, forgettable, weak. The same girl who had stood frozen at that whiteboard while Jessica and her friends laughed, who had eaten lunch alone in bathroom stalls, who had graduated without a single person signing her yearbook. Her finger hovered over the delete button. She could block them all, pretend the message never arrived, continue building the life she'd fought for every single day since leaving that hellhole of a school. But something else stirred in her chest, something that had been growing in silence for 5 long years. Miss Collins, are you even listening to me? The memory dissolved as Maria blinked back to the present. She wasn't in that classroom anymore. She was in her corner office on the 42nd floor, Manhattan sprawling beneath her feet, her reflection now showing a woman in a tailored black suit that cost more than Jessica's entire wardrobe used to. But the notification sound continued, each ping a reminder that somewhere in this city, her former classmates were gathering to plan her public humiliation. Again, Maria set her phone face down on her mahogany desk, but her hands were still shaking. Not from fear this time. From something far more dangerous. Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. The last message in the group chat came from Derek Morrison, the golden boy who'd once accidentally spilled chocolate milk on her only decent dress during homecoming week. Already booked the private room at Meridian Hotel. Maria, we really hope you can make it. It wouldn't be the same without our class president. Oh wait, that was Jessica. Well, we need someone to serve drinks, right? Winking face. Maria's assistant knocked softly before entering. Ms. Collins, the Yamamoto Industries executives are here for your 4 o'clock. The young woman's voice held the same reverence that had taken Maria years to recognize in others, respect earned through brilliance, power, and an iron will that had been forged in the furnace of their cruelty. But right now, Maria felt like that terrified 16-year-old again, and she hated them for it. Tell them I need 5 minutes, Maria said, her voice steadier than her hands. As her assistant left, Maria opened her laptop and pulled up a folder she'd never thought she'd need again. A comprehensive file on every single person from Jefferson High's class of 2019. Their current jobs, their social media profiles, their financial situations, their secrets. She'd compiled it not for revenge, but for protection, to know her enemies should their paths ever cross in the business world. Now, as she scrolled through their mediocre lives and small accomplishments, Maria felt something shift inside her chest. These people who had made her feel worthless were nothing. Less than nothing. And yet they still had the power to make her hands shake. She clicked on Jessica Park's profile. Still in the same small town, married to her high school boyfriend, selling insurance and posting inspirational quotes about manifestation. Her greatest achievement was organizing their high school reunion. Derek Morrison, assistant manager at his father's car dealership, 3 kids he couldn't afford, posting complaints about his mortgage. Rachel Kim, working at a mid-tier marketing agency, still using her high school photos on dating apps. One by one, Maria realized the truth that should have comforted her but only made her angrier. They had peaked at 17. While she had spent 5 years clawing her way out of poverty, building an empire, becoming someone who could buy and sell their entire lives as a rounding error, they had stood still. And they thought they could still humiliate her. Maria's phone buzzed with another message, this one from a number she didn't recognize. Maria, this is David Liu. I know we weren't close in school, but I wanted to warn you. Jessica and her friends are planning something cruel for the reunion. They've been laughing about it for weeks. I'm sorry I never stood up for you back then. I should have been better. David, the quiet boy who'd sat behind her in calculus, who'd occasionally shared his notes when she missed class working her after-school job. He'd never been cruel, just absent. Like most people when cruelty was happening right in front of them. But now he was offering her information. Protection. The kindness she'd needed 17 years old and desperate. Too late. Far too late. Maria deleted the message without responding and opened a new document. If Jessica Park wanted to play games, Maria would remind her why she'd been valedictorian while Jessica had barely graduated. But this wouldn't be about grades or test scores. This would be about power. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Collins, the Japanese executives are getting concerned about the delay. Maria saved her document and closed her laptop. The Yamamoto deal was worth $40 million, more money than her entire graduating class would see in their lifetimes combined. But as she walked toward the conference room, Maria's mind wasn't on profit margins or market penetration. It was on the look in Jessica Park's eyes when she realized exactly who Maria Collins had become, and exactly what she was capable of. The conference room doors opened, and Maria slipped back into the role that had taken her 5 years to perfect. The composed, brilliant executive who never let anyone see her bleed. But underneath her professional smile, something dark and patient was awakening. Jessica Park had made the mistake of thinking Maria Collins was still that scared, powerless girl. She was about to learn the difference between who Maria had been and who she had chosen to become. The phone buzzed one final time as Maria shook hands with the Japanese executives. Another message in the group chat. Maria hasn't responded yet. Think she's too embarrassed to show her face? Or maybe she finally realized her place and is staying where she belongs, invisible. Rolling on the floor laughing. Maria glanced at the message, then put her phone away and focused on the most important deal of her career. But her silence wasn't fear or shame. It was strategy. And in 18 days, when she walked into that reunion, Jessica Park would understand the difference. Maria's hands moved with practiced precision across the keyboard, but her mind was 17 years old again, standing in the school cafeteria with a tray of food and nowhere to sit. The memory had a way of surfacing whenever she was stressed, like her subconscious refused to let her forget where she came from. She'd been scanning the crowded tables, looking for an empty seat, when Jessica Park's voice had cut through the noise like a blade. Oh look, the scholarship rat is looking for some way to contaminate with her poverty germs. The laughter that followed had been worse than the words. Not just Jessica's crew, but the passive faces that turned away, the uncomfortable smiles, the relief in other students' eyes that the target wasn't them. Maria had stood there, frozen, until a sophomore had finally taken pity and gestured to an empty chair at the very back of the cafeteria. That night, Maria had lain in her twin bed in the cramped studio apartment she shared with her mother, listening to the neighbors argue through paper-thin walls, and made herself a promise. Someday, she would be powerful enough that no one could ever make her feel small again. The Yamamoto deal had closed an hour ago. $47 million, actually, $3 million more than projected. Maria should have been celebrating, but instead she found herself researching private investigators and event planning companies. Her assistant, Priya, knocked and entered with Maria's evening coffee. Congratulations on the Yamamoto deal, Ms. Collins. The team is thrilled. Thank you. Maria didn't look up from her screen. Priya, I need you to clear my calendar for the next 3 weeks. Everything non-essential. Priya's eyebrows rose. Maria Collins never cleared her calendar. She worked through holidays, vacations, even the flu. Is everything all right? Maria finally looked up, and something in her expression made Priya take a step back. I need to attend a high school reunion. Oh. Priya relaxed slightly. That sounds nice. Reconnecting with old friends. I didn't have friends. Maria's voice was flat. I had enemies. And apparently, they still think I'm the same person they used to torture. Priya had worked for Maria for 2 years, had seen her navigate hostile takeovers and board meetings with sharks, had watched her remain calm while dealing with misogynistic executives and impossible deadlines. She'd never seen Maria look like this, cold and focused in a way that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. What do you need me to do? Maria smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Research. I'm going to give you a list of names, and I need everything. Financial records, social media activity, employment history, family situations, legal troubles, medical records if you can get them. Everything. Ms. Collins, that sounds illegal. Unethical. Maria's laugh held no warmth. Priya, these people spent 4 years trying to destroy me. They made every single day a nightmare. And now they want to do it again, for fun, because they assume I'm still helpless. She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward Priya. The group chat was still active, the messages getting crueler by the hour. Jessica, I wonder if she's still wearing those pathetic thrift store clothes. Remember that tragic prom dress? I'm dying to see what discount disaster she shows up in. Derek, my money says she doesn't show. She knows she can't compete with us. We all have real lives now. Rachel, unless she's still cleaning offices. Maybe she can bring her mop as a +1. Face with tears of joy. Jessica, OMD stop, I can't breathe. This is going to be epic. I'm definitely live streaming this. Priya read the messages, her expression growing more horrified with each line. These people are adults. Successful adults, according to their LinkedIn profiles. Jessica Park runs her own insurance agency. Derek Morrison is expanding his family's dealership. Rachel Kim just got promoted to senior marketing coordinator. Maria's voice was bitter. They have mortgages and children and retirement plans, and they still get their kicks from bullying people. So what's your plan? Maria closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. For the first time in hours, she looked genuinely calm. I'm going to show up. That's it. That's everything. Maria's smile returned, but this one was different, confident, almost predatory. Priya, what do you think happens when a group of middle-class suburbanites realizes they've been mocking someone who could buy their lives as a hobby? Priya was quiet for a moment. They panic. They panic. Maria stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But that's just the beginning. See, humiliation was never about making me feel worthless. It was about making them feel powerful. Take away their ability to look down on someone, force them to look up instead, and their entire sense of self crumbles. You're not just going to show up, Priya realized. You're going to destroy them. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. Maria turned back to face her assistant. But I need information to do it properly. Jessica Park thinks she's successful because she owns a small insurance agency. Wait until she finds out I could buy her entire business and shut it down before dessert is served. Derek Morrison is proud of his dealership expansion. He won't be when he discovers I know about his underwater mortgage and the loan shark money he borrowed to fund it. Priya stared at her boss, seeing a side of Maria Collins she'd never imagined existed. How do you know about the loan shark? Maria's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Because I bought his debt last month. Derek Morrison owes me $250,000, and he doesn't even know it. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Finally, Priya spoke. You've been planning this. I've been protecting myself. Maria's voice softened slightly. You have to understand, Priya, when you grow up powerless, you learn to gather power wherever you can find it. Information is power. Money is power. But the greatest power is making someone realize they never mattered as much as they thought they did. Priya nodded slowly. What do you need me to find? Maria returned to her desk and began typing. Within minutes, she'd compiled a list of 17 names, every person who'd made her life hell at Jefferson High. Start with these. I want to know everything: who's struggling financially, who's hiding secrets, who's built their life on lies they can't afford to have exposed. And then I'm going to that reunion. Maria's fingers paused over the keyboard. And I'm going to remind them why I was valedictorian and they were nothing. As Priya left with the list, Maria opened a new document and began typing a response to the group chat. She'd been silent for 6 hours, long enough for them to assume she was too intimidated to respond. Jessica, Derek, Rachel, how wonderful to hear from you all. I've been in board meetings all day, but I wanted to let you know I'll absolutely be attending the reunion. I can't wait to catch up and see how everyone's doing. It's been so long since we've all been in the same room together. I have a feeling it's going to be a night none of us will ever forget. See you soon. Maria. She sent the message and closed her laptop. The response was immediate, dozens of notifications as the group chat exploded with shocked reactions. They hadn't expected her to respond at all, let alone with such confidence. But Maria didn't read their messages. She had more important things to do. Her phone rang, and she glanced at the caller ID, David Liu, the boy who'd tried to warn her earlier. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. Maria, I wasn't sure you'd pick up. David. She kept her voice neutral. What can I do for you? I wanted to talk to you about the reunion. Jessica's been planning to humiliate me. Yes, I gathered that from her messages. There was a pause. You're in the group chat. I am now. Interesting reading. Maria stood and walked to the window again. The city lights were beginning to twinkle in the growing dusk. Tell me, David, are you part of this little scheme? God, no. Maria, I know we barely knew each other in school, but I never forgot how they treated you. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. His voice was earnest, almost pleading. I've been trying to talk Jessica out of this for weeks, but she's obsessed. She keeps saying you need to be put in your place. My place. Maria's reflection in the window looked back at her, composed and powerful in her tailored suit. And where does Jessica think my place is? At the bottom. She's convinced you're still struggling. She doesn't know about your success. Maria laughed, a sound devoid of humor. My success. David, what do you think I do for a living? Honestly, I don't know. I tried to look you up online, but you're surprisingly hard to find. That's intentional. Maria turned away from the window. I value my privacy. But since you seem genuinely concerned about me, I'll tell you, I run a private equity firm. We acquire and restructure companies. Last year, we managed assets worth approximately $2 billion. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Maria thought the call had dropped. Finally, David spoke, his voice barely a whisper. $2 billion. Give or take a few $100 million. Maria sat back down at her desk. Now, David, I have a question for you. Are you calling to warn me out of kindness, or because you're hoping I'll skip the reunion and spare everyone the embarrassment of realizing they've been mocking someone who could buy their entire lives? I don't want anyone to get hurt. That's very noble of you. Maria's voice hardened. Where was that nobility when Jessica was dumping your lunch tray over my head? When Derek was spreading rumors that I was prostituting myself to pay for my school supplies? When Rachel was writing "kill yourself" on my locker? Maria, I was a coward. I know that. But I was just trying to survive high school myself. I wasn't part of their inner circle. You were a bystander. And bystanders are just as guilty as the bullies. Maria's words cut through his excuses like a scalpel. You knew what was happening was wrong, and you chose to do nothing. That's a choice, David. And choices have consequences. I'm trying to make up for it now. Too late. Maria ended the call and immediately blocked his number. She stared at her reflection in the black screen of her phone, seeing not the powerful woman she'd become but the broken girl she'd been. David's call had triggered something she hadn't expected. Not anger at him, but disappointment in herself for feeling, even for a moment, grateful for his concern. She was done being grateful for basic human decency. She was done making excuses for people who'd watched her suffer and done nothing. And she was definitely done pretending that their cruelty hadn't shaped every single decision she'd made since leaving that school. Maria opened her laptop and began making plans. Real plans. If Jessica Park wanted to play games, Maria would show her how the game was really played. But first, she needed to make one more call. She dialed her lawyer's number, not caring that it was after hours. When he answered, she didn't bother with pleasantries. Marcus, it's Maria. I need you to prepare acquisition papers for 3 companies: Park Insurance Solutions, Morrison Family Motors, and Kim Corp Marketing. I want controlling interest in all 3, and I want it done quietly. Maria, those are tiny companies. Why would you? Personal reasons. Can you have the papers ready by tomorrow? Of course, but... Thank you. Send them to my office first thing in the morning. She hung up and sat back in her chair, finally allowing herself to smile. Jessica, Derek, and Rachel thought they were planning her humiliation. They had no idea they were planning their own. Maria's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m. with a call from Marcus, her lawyer. She answered on the first ring, already dressed and reviewing acquisition documents over her morning coffee. Tell me you have good news. Better than good. I have catastrophic news for them. Marcus's voice carried the satisfaction of a man who'd just executed a perfect legal maneuver. All 3 acquisitions went through. Park Insurance Solutions, Morrison Family Motors, and Kim Corp Marketing are now wholly owned subsidiaries of your shell company, Meridian Holdings. Maria felt something cold and powerful settle in her chest. They don't know yet. Not a clue. The paperwork won't hit their desks until Monday morning. As of this moment, Jessica Park, Derek Morrison, and Rachel Kim are working for you. They just don't know it yet. And their debts. Derek's loan shark debt transferred to you, as planned. But Maria, there's something else. Rachel Kim's company was deeper underwater than we thought. She's been embezzling from client accounts to keep the lights on. We now have evidence that could put her in prison for 7 to 10 years. Maria set down her coffee cup, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Send me everything. I want every detail, every transaction, every lie they've told to keep their pathetic little empires running. Maria, are you sure about this? What you're planning, it's not illegal, but it's justice. Maria's voice was sharp as broken glass. They had 17 years to become better people. Instead, they chose to stay exactly who they were in high school. Now they get to face the consequences. After ending the call, Maria walked to her bathroom mirror and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was impeccably dressed, perfectly composed, radiating the kind of quiet power that made boardrooms fall silent. But underneath the professional exterior, something darker was stirring, something that had been sleeping for 5 years and was now fully awake. Her phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Maria, this is Amanda Foster. I heard you might be coming to the reunion. I wanted to reach out because I owe you an apology. I was part of the problem back then, and I've regretted it every day since. If you're willing, I'd love to talk before the reunion. I think there are things you should know about what really happened senior year. Things Jessica made sure you never found out. Maria stared at the message for a long moment. Amanda Foster, student council president, honor society member, the good girl who'd never directly participated in the bullying but had certainly never stopped it either. Another bystander, like David, trying to ease her conscience with too little, too late apologies. But the mention of secrets from senior year made Maria pause. There had always been something strange about the way her final semester had unfolded. Opportunities that had vanished overnight, scholarships that had been mysteriously withdrawn, college applications that had been lost by the guidance office. She'd always suspected sabotage but had never been able to prove it. Instead of responding to Amanda, Maria called her private investigator. Collins here. I need you to dig deeper into Jefferson High, class of 2019. Specifically, I want to know about any incidents involving scholarship fraud, application tampering, or academic sabotage during the 2018 to 2019 school year. That's going back pretty far, Ms. Collins. School records from that period might be. Money is no object. Find me everything. And I need it by tonight. Maria hung up and returned to her morning routine, but her mind was racing. If Jessica and her crew had actively sabotaged her future, if they'd done more than just make her daily life miserable, then what Maria was planning would be more than revenge. It would be justice. At exactly 9 a.m., Maria's assistant knocked. Ms. Collins? There's someone here to see you. She says it's about the reunion. Maria looked up from her computer, surprised. Send her in. The woman who walked through Maria's office doors was barely recognizable as Amanda Foster from high school. Gone was the polished, confident girl who'd glided through the hallways with effortless popularity. This Amanda looked tired, nervous, dressed in a worn business suit that had seen better years. Maria. Amanda's voice shook slightly. Thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either. Maria gestured to the chair across from her desk but didn't offer coffee or pleasantries. You said there were things I should know about senior year. Amanda sat down, clutching her purse like a lifeline. I need you to understand, I was 18 and scared and I made terrible choices. But I can't live with the secret anymore, especially not when Jessica is planning to humiliate you again. What secret? Amanda took a shaky breath. The scholarship you lost senior year. The full ride to Columbia. It wasn't lost because of your grades or your essay or anything legitimate. Maria's blood turned to ice. What are you talking about? Jessica's father was on the scholarship committee. She found out you'd been selected, and she convinced him that you'd cheated on your application. She forged evidence, faked transcripts, altered recommendation letters. She made it look like you'd lied about your financial situation and your academic achievements. The words hit Maria like physical blows. She gripped the edge of her desk, fighting to keep her expression neutral while her world tilted sideways. You knew about this. I helped her. Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. God help me. I helped her forge the documents. She said it was just a prank, that they'd figure out the truth eventually and you'd still get financial aid somewhere else. But when the scholarship committee pressed charges for fraud and you had to withdraw your Columbia application. I remember. Maria's voice was deadly quiet. I remember thinking my life was over. I remember working 3 jobs to afford community college. I remember believing that maybe I really wasn't smart enough, Maybe I really didn't deserve better. Maria, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Maria stood slowly, her movements controlled but predatory. You helped destroy my future because a spoiled brat convinced you it was a prank, and now you're sorry. I know it's not enough. It's not anything. Maria walked around her desk, and Amanda instinctively shrank back in her chair. Do you have any idea what you did to me? Any concept of how that single act changed the entire trajectory of my life? I know, and I've tried to make amends. I became a teacher. I work with underprivileged kids. You what? Maria's laugh was sharp and bitter. You became a teacher? You work with poor kids. And you think that erases what you did to me? Amanda was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. I know it doesn't. Nothing can. But I wanted you to know the truth before the reunion. Jessica's planning something awful, and after what we did to you senior year, you deserve to be prepared. What is Jessica planning? She's hired a videographer. She wants to record your humiliation and post it online. She's been telling everyone that seeing you fail will be the perfect way to celebrate how successful she's become. Amanda wiped her eyes with a tissue. Maria, please don't go. She'll destroy you all over again. Maria stared at Amanda for a long moment, then began to laugh. It started as a chuckle but grew into something deeper, more dangerous. Amanda looked terrified. Amanda, let me tell you what's going to happen at that reunion. Maria returned to her chair, leaning back with predatory calm. Jessica Park is going to discover that the insurance agency she's so proud of now belongs to me. Derek Morrison is going to learn that I own his debt and can foreclose on his dealership whenever I choose. And Rachel Kim is going to find out that I have evidence of her embezzlement that could put her in prison for a decade. Amanda's face went white. What? I've spent the last 24 hours buying their lives. Maria's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. By the time I'm done with them, they'll be begging for the kind of mercy they never showed me. Maria, you can't. I can. I have. And there's nothing any of you can do to stop it. Maria leaned forward. But Amanda, since you're here confessing your sins, let me give you a choice. You can continue to live with your guilt, knowing you helped destroy an innocent girl's future. Or you can help me make sure justice is finally served. What do you want me to do? Maria's smile turned genuinely warm for the first time since Amanda had walked in. I want you to go to that reunion. I want you to watch Jessica's face when she realizes who I've become. And I want you to record every single second of her humiliation. I can't do that. You can, and you will. Maria's voice turned cold again. Because Amanda, I also had my investigator look into you. Want to know what he found? Amanda's hands started shaking. Your teaching license was revoked last year for inappropriate relationships with a student's parent. You're currently working as a substitute because no school district will hire you full-time. Your husband left you, took the kids, and you're living in a studio apartment behind a gas station. Maria tilted her head. So you see, you're not actually the reformed saint you pretend to be. You're just another person whose life fell apart because of poor choices. It wasn't like that. It doesn't matter what it was like. What matters is what I can make it look like. Maria opened her laptop and turned the screen toward Amanda. One phone call from me, and every parent in this city will know about your inappropriate relationship. Your substitute teaching job will vanish, and you'll never work in education again. Amanda stared at the screen, her face crumbling. What do you want? I want you at that reunion with a camera. I want you to document every moment of Jessica's downfall. And when it's over, I want you to post the video online with a detailed explanation of how she sabotaged my scholarship and destroyed my future. Maria closed the laptop. Do this, and your secrets stay safe. Refuse, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who Amanda Foster really is. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you the chance to do something right for once in your pathetic life. Maria stood and walked back to the window. 17 years ago, you helped destroy an innocent girl because a bully told you it would be fun. Now you have the chance to help that girl, who became a woman powerful enough to own your tormentors, get the justice she was denied. Amanda sat in silence for a long moment, then slowly nodded. I'll do it. Good. Maria didn't turn around. The reunion is tomorrow night. Don't disappoint me, Amanda. I'd hate to have to ruin what's left of your life. After Amanda left, Maria returned to her desk and opened the files her lawyer had sent. Financial records, business documents, personal information. Everything she needed to systematically dismantle the lives of 3 people who thought they were still untouchable. But the revelation about her scholarship changed everything. This wasn't just about childhood bullying anymore. This was about theft of her future, her opportunities, her potential. Jessica Park hadn't just made her life miserable, she'd actively worked to destroy it. Maria picked up her phone and dialed Marcus again. I need you to prepare additional paperwork. Criminal fraud charges. I want Jessica Park arrested at the reunion tomorrow night. Maria, what happened? What did you find out? I found out that some debts can never be repaid. Maria's voice was steady, but underneath the calm exterior, something ancient and patient was finally stirring. But they can be collected. She hung up and stared out at the city below. Tomorrow night, Jefferson High's class of 2019 would gather to celebrate their success and mock the girl they'd left behind. They had no idea that the girl they'd destroyed had spent 5 years becoming someone who could destroy them right back. And unlike them, Maria Collins always finished what she started. The Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a shrine to mediocrity. Golden streamers hung from crystal chandeliers, class photos from 2019 were mounted on easels, and a banner reading Jefferson High Class of 2019, Living Our Best Lives, stretched across the main entrance. Maria arrived exactly 30 minutes late, not fashionably late, but strategically late, when the initial excitement had settled and people were comfortable enough to be cruel. She'd chosen her outfit with surgical precision, a midnight blue dress that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, paired with jewelry that caught the light in ways that whispered wealth without shouting it. Her makeup was flawless, her posture confident, and her smile was the kind that made people wonder what secret she was keeping. But as Maria handed her keys to the valet, her phone buzzed with a message that made her blood freeze. Maria, this is Marcus. We have a problem. Someone's been investigating you. They know about the acquisitions, and they've been asking questions about your company's practices. I think someone at the reunion tonight is planning their own surprise. Be careful. Maria's hands didn't shake as she typed back. Who? I'm still trying to find out. But Maria, whoever it is has resources. Real resources. This isn't some amateur hour revenge plot. Maria slipped her phone into her purse and walked toward the hotel entrance, her mind racing. Someone had turned the tables on her. Someone who knew she was coming and had prepared accordingly. The predator had become the prey, and she had no idea who was hunting her. The hotel lobby was filled with people she recognized but barely remembered. Classmates who'd existed on the periphery of her high school hell, neither tormentors nor allies, just witnesses to her suffering. Their conversations stopped as she passed, whispers following in her wake. Is that really Maria Collins? She looks so different. I heard she's done really well for herself. Jessica's going to lose her mind. Maria smiled and nodded politely, playing the role of the gracious reunion attendee, but her eyes were scanning the crowd for threats. Someone here knew more than they should. Someone was planning their own confrontation. She was almost to the ballroom doors when a familiar voice stopped her cold. Maria fucking Collins. She turned slowly, and her breath caught. Standing behind her was Alex Rivera, captain of the debate team, valedictorian runner-up, and the only person at Jefferson High who'd ever been able to match her intellectually. He'd also been the only person who'd never looked at her with pity or cruelty, just interest. But this wasn't the awkward, brilliant boy she remembered. This Alex was tall, confident, devastatingly handsome in a way that spoke of personal trainers and expensive grooming. His suit was perfectly tailored, his smile was predatory, and his eyes held secrets that made Maria's skin prickle with awareness. Alex. Maria's voice was steady, but her heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. You look different. Yeah, I get that a lot. He stepped closer, and Maria caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something dangerous. You look exactly the same. I doubt that. No, you do. Still the smartest person in the room. Still carrying yourself like you're ready for war. Still pretending you don't notice that everyone's staring at you. His eyes traveled over her face like he was memoizing every detail. But there's something else now. Something that wasn't there in high school. And what's that? Power. Alex's smile was sharp enough to match her own. Real power. The kind that comes from burning everything down and building something better from the ashes. Maria felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine attraction mixed with intellectual excitement. Alex Rivera had always been able to see through her defenses, and apparently that hadn't changed. Are you psychoanalyzing me, Alex? I'm admiring you. He moved even closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I always did, you know. Even when everyone else was treating you like garbage, I thought you were magnificent. Then why didn't you do anything about it? Because I was a coward. His honesty was brutal and immediate. And because I knew that if I tried to help you, Jessica would destroy me too. I chose self-preservation over doing what was right. Maria studied his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. But all she saw was truth, raw, uncomfortable truth that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. And now I'm not a coward anymore. Alex reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. And now I have something that belongs to you. Maria took the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a copy of her original scholarship application to Columbia, complete with authentic signatures and recommendation letters. The real documents that proved she'd never committed fraud. Where did you get this? I stole it from Jessica's father's office 15 years ago. Alex's voice was quiet but intense. I knew what she'd done, and I knew it was wrong, but I was too much of a coward to speak up. So I took the evidence and kept it, thinking someday I'd find the courage to make it right. Maria stared at the document, her vision blurring slightly. This piece of paper could have changed everything, could have restored her scholarship, cleared her name, given her back the future that had been stolen. Why didn't you use it? Why didn't you expose her? Because I was 18 and terrified and stupid. Alex's hand covered hers where she held the paper. But also because I knew that someday, you'd be powerful enough to use it yourself. And when that day came, your revenge would be complete. Maria looked up at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her heart race. You've been planning this. I've been waiting for you. Alex's voice dropped to a whisper. I've spent 15 years becoming someone worthy of standing beside you when you finally got your justice. I built a tech company worth $800 million. I learned how to fight, how to win, how to destroy people who deserve it. Why? Because I was in love with you in high school, and I was too much of a coward to say it. Alex's confession hit her like a physical blow. Because I've been in love with you ever since, even when I thought I'd never see you again. And because when I heard Jessica was planning to humiliate you again, I decided it was time to stop being a coward. Maria felt the world tilt around her. In the space of 30 seconds, Alex had given her proof of her innocence, confessed to a decade-and-a-half obsession, and revealed himself as another player in the night's deadly game. Alex, don't say anything yet. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe. Go in there and do what you came to do. Destroy them. Make them pay for every single day they made you suffer. But when it's over, when you've had your justice and your revenge, remember that you don't have to face the aftermath alone. Maria stared at him, her mind reeling. The attraction she'd felt was more than physical, it was recognition. Alex Rivera had become someone who could match her intelligence, her ruthlessness, her capacity for long-term planning. He'd spent 15 years becoming her equal. Maria! A shrill voice cut through the moment like a blade. Oh my God, is that really you? Jessica Park approached them with her arms spread wide, wearing a dress that screamed expensive but whispered trying too hard. Her smile was perfect, predatory, excited. Behind her trailed Derek and Rachel, looking like faithful disciples following their queen to war. Jessica. Maria's voice was ice-wrapped in silk. You look exactly the same. The insult landed like a slap. Jessica's smile flickered for just a moment before returning full force. Oh, aren't you sweet? Maria, I have to ask, where did you get that dress? It's so interesting. Paris. Last week. Maria's smile never wavered. Where did you get yours? It looks familiar. Derek laughed, not realizing he was walking into a trap. Probably the same discount rack where she got her prom dress. Maria turned to look at Derek properly for the first time, and her smile grew genuinely warm. Derek Morrison. How nice to see you again. How's the dealership business? Great. Actually, really great. We just expanded into 3 new locations. Derek puffed out his chest proudly. I'm basically running a car empire now. How impressive. Maria's voice carried just enough admiration to make Derek preen. I'd love to hear more about your business practices. I'm always interested in learning about successful entrepreneurs. Rachel stepped forward, sensing danger but unable to identify it. Maria, what do you do for work these days? We're also curious about how you've been managing. I manage investments. Maria's answer was perfectly honest and completely misleading. I help people maximize their assets and minimize their risks. Like a financial advisor. Jessica's voice carried a note of disdain. How practical. Something like that. Maria glanced at Alex, who was watching the exchange with barely concealed amusement. Actually, Alex, didn't you say you were interested in investment opportunities? Derek and Rachel have such successful businesses. Perhaps we should discuss some partnerships. Alex's smile was sharp as a razor. I'd love to. I'm always looking for companies with strong fundamentals and honest leadership. The word honest hung in the air like a threat. Rachel's face went pale, but Derek was too obtuse to catch the implication. We should definitely talk. Derek grabbed Alex's hand in an enthusiastic handshake. I could use some tech innovation in my dealerships. Really modernize the whole operation. I'm sure we can work something out. Alex's voice was smooth as silk. Maria's firm has some very creative approaches to business restructuring. Jessica was starting to sense that something was wrong. Her instincts, honed by years of social warfare, were screaming danger. But she couldn't identify the threat, and her pride wouldn't let her back down. Well, this is all very inspiring. Maria, we should go inside. The program's about to start, and I have some very special memories to share with everyone. I can't wait. Maria's smile was radiant. I love reminiscing about the good old days. As they walked toward the ballroom, Alex fell into step beside Maria. Are you ready for this? I've been ready for 15 years. Maria's voice was steady, but Alex could see the tension in her shoulders. The question is whether they are ready for me. They are not. Alex's voice carried absolute certainty. They are about to discover that the girl they destroyed became someone who could destroy them right back. Alex. Maria's voice was soft, vulnerable in a way that made his chest tighten. Yeah. Thank you. For the evidence. For waiting. For becoming someone strong enough to stand with me tonight. Maria. Yeah. When this is over, when they are all broken and humiliated and understanding exactly what they did to you, remind me to tell you what I should have said 15 years ago. Maria looked at him, seeing promise and danger and something that looked like forever in his eyes. What's that? That you were never the loser. You were always the prize. Alex's voice was rough with emotion. And tonight, everyone's going to know it. The ballroom doors opened, revealing a room full of people who had no idea their comfortable little world was about to be obliterated. Maria took a deep breath, feeling Alex's presence beside her like armor, and stepped inside. Behind them, Amanda Foster slipped through the doors with a camera in her purse and terror in her eyes. The reunion had officially begun, and Maria Collins was about to remind everyone exactly why she'd been valedictorian while they'd been nothing. The ballroom had filled with the ghosts of Maria's past, faces she recognized but had tried to forget, voices that carried echoes of laughter at her expense, eyes that had once looked through her as if she didn't exist. Now those same eyes followed her every movement with curiosity, confusion, and growing recognition that something had fundamentally changed. Maria moved through the crowd like a predator in sheep's clothing, accepting compliments on her appearance, deflecting questions about her career with gracious vagueness, and watching Jessica's growing agitation with cold satisfaction. Every few minutes, her phone buzzed with updates from Marcus about the legal documents being finalized, but she ignored them. Tonight wasn't about paperwork and acquisitions. Tonight was about watching Jessica Park's world burn. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. Jessica's voice cut through the conversations as she took the makeshift stage at the front of the ballroom. She looked radiant in her role as reunion coordinator, feeding off the attention like a vampire feeding on blood. I want to welcome everyone to our 15-year reunion. Can you believe it's been that long since we walked across that graduation stage? The crowd responded with polite applause and nostalgic murmurs. Tonight is about celebrating how far we've all come, sharing our successes, and reconnecting with old friends. Jessica's eyes found Maria in the crowd, and her smile turned predatory. I thought it would be fun to share some memories from our high school days. I've prepared a little slideshow of photos and special moments that really capture who we were back then. Maria felt Alex tense beside her. This was it, Jessica's planned humiliation, the moment she'd been building toward all evening. But Maria's expression remained serene, almost bored, as if she were watching a mildly interesting documentary about strangers. The lights dimmed, and a projector screen descended from the ceiling. The first few slides were harmless, group photos from football games, prom pictures, graduation shots. The crowd laughed and pointed out younger versions of themselves, calling out embarrassing fashion choices and forgotten hairstyles. Then Jessica's voice turned silk-wrapped steel. Of course, high school wasn't just about the popular kids. We had all types at Jefferson High, including some very unique individuals who made our experience so memorable. The next slide made the room go dead silent. It was a photo of Maria from senior year, soaking wet, chocolate milk dripping from her hair and staining her thrift store sweater, surrounded by laughing faces. Someone had captured the exact moment of her humiliation with cruel precision. "Ah, Maria Collins," Jessica said with fake fondness. Always so dedicated to her studies. Even when she was having a little lunch trouble. A few people laughed nervously, but most of the room shifted uncomfortably. This was cruelty, not nostalgia, and everyone could feel it. Maria didn't move, didn't react, didn't give Jessica the satisfaction of seeing her pain. The slides continued, more photos of Maria's worst moments, each one accompanied by Jessica's gleeful narration. Maria eating lunch alone in a bathroom stall. Maria's face after being rejected for prom. Maria crying after the scholarship incident. And let's not forget Maria's greatest achievement, Jessica said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Graduating without a single friend to sign her yearbook. Though I'm sure she's done wonderfully for herself since then. Haven't you, Maria? The spotlight found Maria in the crowd, and every face turned toward her. This was the moment Jessica had been dreaming of, Maria's public humiliation, broadcast to their entire graduating class and recorded for posterity. But Maria didn't crumble. She didn't run. She didn't even look upset. Instead, she smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine and completely unaffected by the cruelty she'd just witnessed. "Thank you, Jessica," Maria said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "That was quite a presentation. Very thorough." She began walking toward the stage, her heels clicking on the marble floor like a countdown to execution. The crowd parted before her, sensing something momentous was about to happen. "You know, I've been looking forward to this reunion for weeks," Maria continued conversationally. "Not because I missed anyone, obviously, but because I've been curious about something." She reached the stage and gracefully stepped up beside a confused Jessica, who was clearly expecting tears or rage, not this calm confidence. "I wanted to see if you'd all stayed exactly the same," Maria said, looking out at the crowd. "And I'm happy to report that you have. Jessica is still a cruel bully who gets her kicks from hurting people. Derek is still a thoughtless follower who goes along with anything if it makes him feel powerful. Rachel is still a coward who stands by and watches while others do her dirty work." The room was so quiet that the air conditioning sounded like a windstorm. "But here's what you don't know," Maria continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "While you've all been standing still, playing the same petty games you played at 17, I've been building something extraordinary." She pulled out her phone and opened an app, then connected it to the projector system with practiced ease. Jessica tried to stop her, but Maria gently pushed her aside with the kind of casual physical confidence that spoke of power. "Jessica, let me show everyone what I've been up to since graduation." The screen filled with the logo of Collins Holdings, Maria's investment firm. Then came the numbers: assets under management, successful acquisitions, annual revenue. The figures were staggering, representing more wealth than most people in the room would see in 10 lifetimes. "I run a private equity firm that manages approximately $2.4 billion in assets," Maria said matter-of-factly. "We specialize in acquiring underperforming companies and either improving them or liquidating them, depending on their potential value." The room buzzed with shocked whispers. People were pulling out their phones, Googling Maria's company, trying to verify what they were hearing. "But that's not the interesting part," Maria continued, advancing the slides. "The interesting part is what I did yesterday." The next slide showed acquisition documents. Park Insurance Solutions, Morrison Family Motors, Kimcorp Marketing, all three companies now owned by Meridian Holdings, a subsidiary of Collins Holdings. "Jessica, Derek, Rachel, congratulations. You now work for me." The silence that followed was so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Jessica's face went from confusion to horror to rage in the space of 3 seconds. "That's impossible," she sputtered. "You can't just buy your companies." "Actually, I can. I did. The paperwork was finalized this morning." Maria's smile was radiant. "Which means that as of tomorrow, I control your professional lives. Your income, your benefits, your future employment prospects, all of it belongs to me now." Derek stumbled forward, his face pale. "Maria, you can't be serious. My family's business is hemorrhaging money because you borrowed from a loan shark to fund your expansion." Maria's voice was clinical, precise. "A loan shark whose debt I purchased last month. You owe me $247,000, Derek. With interest, of course. Rachel made a choking sound. This is insane. You can't do this to us. Can't I? Maria advanced to the next slide, which showed bank records and financial documents. Rachel, would you like to explain to everyone where the $60,000 missing from your client accounts went? Or should I? The room erupted. People were shouting, phones were buzzing with frantic calls, and Jessica was screaming something about lawsuits and revenge. But Maria stood in the center of the chaos like the eye of a hurricane, completely calm. But wait, she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. There's more. The next slide was a police report. Jessica's father's name was prominently featured, along with charges of fraud and conspiracy. 15 years ago, Jessica Park and her father conspired to frame me for scholarship fraud. They forged documents, falsified records, and destroyed my chance at a Columbia education. I have evidence of this crime, and as of tonight, warrants have been issued for both of their arrests. Jessica's face went white as paper. You're lying. That never happened. Didn't it? Maria pulled out the envelope Alex had given her. I have the original documents that prove my innocence. I also have a witness who's ready to testify about Jessica's confession. All eyes turned to Amanda, who was standing frozen near the back of the room with tears streaming down her face. She nodded slowly, confirming Maria's words. No, Jessica whispered, finally understanding the scope of what was happening. No, this isn't real. This can't be happening. Oh, but it is. Maria's voice was gentle now, almost kind. You see, Jessica, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed that destroying someone would keep them down forever. You never considered that you might be creating something far more dangerous, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The ballroom doors burst open, and police officers entered. Maria had timed everything perfectly. Jessica Park, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and identity theft. As the officers approached, Jessica turned to Maria with desperate fury. You think this makes you better than me? You think destroying my life proves something? No, Maria said softly. This doesn't make me better than you. It makes me justice. But as the handcuffs clicked around Jessica's wrists, Maria felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, but emptiness. She'd won. She'd gotten everything she'd planned for. So why did she feel so hollow? It was then that she noticed Alex watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Concern. Disappointment. Fear. Maria, he said quietly, approaching the stage. Are you done? What do you mean? Are you done with the revenge? Because there's something else you need to know. The way he said it made ice form in her veins. What? Alex pulled out his own phone and showed her a news article that had been published 20 minutes ago. The headline read, Tech CEO Alex Rivera suspected of corporate espionage and market manipulation. The person who's been investigating you? It wasn't random. It was me they were really after. Alex's voice was tight with anger. Someone found out I've been helping you, and they are trying to destroy both of us. Maria stared at the article, seeing quotes from anonymous sources, allegations of insider trading, and photos of Alex that made him look guilty of everything. Her triumph curdled into dread. Who did this? I don't know yet. But Maria, they have evidence. Real evidence. Phone records, financial transactions, meeting schedules. Someone's been watching us, recording us, building a case. The room around them was still chaos. Police leading Jessica away, Derek sobbing about his dealership, Rachel frantically calling lawyers. But Maria only had eyes for Alex and the growing horror in his expression. There's more, he said. Your company is being investigated too. They are alleging that your acquisitions were based on illegally obtained information, that you've been using insider knowledge to target vulnerable businesses. Maria felt the world tilt sideways. Everything she'd built, everything she'd worked for, was about to crumble. Her revenge was complete, but the cost was going to be everything she'd sacrificed to achieve it. Alex, I know, but someone's made it look like you did. And Maria. His voice broke slightly. They have recordings of our conversation tonight. They know about the scholarship evidence, the acquisitions, all of it. We're both going down. Maria looked out at the chaos surrounding them, her former tormentors destroyed, her own life imploding, and the man she was falling in love with about to be ruined because he'd tried to help her. She'd won the war, but she was about to lose everything that mattered. And somewhere in the crowd, hidden among the faces of people she'd forgotten, Someone was watching her fall with the same cruel satisfaction she'd felt watching Jessica's arrest. The hunter had become the hunted. And Maria Collins, for the first time in 15 years, had no idea what to do next. The hotel suite Alex had booked for the night became their war room and their prison. Maria sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, watching her empire crumble in real time while Alex paced like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in rapid, desperate tones to lawyers who kept giving him worse and worse news. "The SEC has frozen my assets," Alex said, ending another call. "Everything. My company, my personal accounts, even my fucking coffee shop rewards card probably. They are treating this like I'm running a cartel." Maria didn't look up from her screen. "Join the club. The FBI raided my offices 20 minutes ago. Priya texted me from the lobby while federal agents were loading my servers onto trucks." Through the suite's windows, they could see police cars still surrounding the hotel. The reunion had been evacuated, their former classmates scattered to the winds with a story they'd be telling for the rest of their lives. But Maria and Alex were trapped, not by law enforcement, but by something far more dangerous. "We can't go home," Maria said, her voice hollow. "We can't access our money, can't trust our phones, can't contact anyone without potentially making them a target. Maria, we need to figure out who's doing this." "I know who's doing this." Maria finally looked up, and Alex was shocked by the emptiness in her eyes. "The only question is why it took me so long to see it." She turned her laptop toward him, showing a financial document that made his blood freeze. Collins Holdings was acquired 6 months ago by a shell company called Meridian Industries. "I thought I was buying businesses to destroy Jessica and her friends. But someone was using my own company to do it." Alex sat down heavily in the chair across from her. "Someone's been controlling your moves. Not just controlling them, orchestrating them." Maria pulled up another document. "Every piece of information I used tonight, Derek's debt, Rachel's embezzlement, even Jessica's scholarship fraud, it was all fed to me. The private investigator I hired, my lawyer, even Amanda's confession. Someone wanted me to have that information. But why? Why go through all this trouble just to destroy us?" Maria was quiet for a long moment, pieces clicking together in her mind with horrible clarity. "Because destroying Jessica was never the point. We were." She opened a new window on her laptop, showing a series of news articles that had been published throughout the evening. Each one painted Maria and Alex as criminals, but the language was too polished, too coordinated. This wasn't random journalism. This was a campaign. "Alex, what did you do between high school and now?" "Really? I built a tech company." "I told you." "What kind of tech company?" Alex hesitated, and Maria saw the truth in his eyes before he spoke. "Data analytics. Predictive algorithms. We help companies identify and acquire underperforming assets before their competitors know they are available. In other words, you do exactly what I do, but with technology instead of financial leverage." "Maria, where are you going with this?" She pulled up one final document, a corporate filing that made everything clear. "Meridian Industries, the company that owns my business. It's a subsidiary of Rivera Tech Holdings. Your company, Alex." The silence that followed was so complete that Maria could hear her own heartbeat. Alex stared at the screen, his face cycling through confusion, realization, and horror. "That's impossible. I would know if." "Would you?" Maria's voice was deadly quiet. "How many shell companies does your business use? How many acquisition vehicles, holding companies, subsidiary structures? How much of your empire do you actually control versus how much just runs on autopilot?" Alex grabbed his own laptop and began frantically typing. Maria watched his face grow paler with each search result. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Someone's been using my company as a front for years. Transactions I never authorized, acquisitions I never approved, contracts I never signed. Someone with access to your systems, your passwords, your biometric data." Maria felt sick to her stomach. "Someone who could make it look like you were voluntarily participating in corporate espionage and market manipulation. Who would have that kind of access?" Maria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The same person who had access to my private investigator's files, my lawyer's communications, and Amanda's personal history. The same person who could coordinate federal investigations, media campaigns, and legal proceedings across multiple jurisdictions." "Maria, you're scaring me." "Good. I'm scared too." She closed her laptop and walked to the window, looking down at the police cars and news vans gathering in the street. "Alex, There's only one person with the resources, connections, and motivation to pull off something this elaborate. Who? Maria turned back to him, and Alex saw something in her expression that made him want to run. Someone who's been planning this for 15 years. Someone who knew that eventually, I'd be successful enough and angry enough to try for revenge against Jessica. Someone who could use that revenge as the perfect cover for destroying both of us. Alex's phone buzzed with a text message. He looked at it and went white. What is it? It's from my business partner. He says he's been trying to reach me all evening, but my phone's been going straight to voicemail. He wants to meet tonight to discuss recent developments and damage control. Maria felt ice form in her veins. What's your partner's name? Jonathan Park. He's been my CTO for 8 years, brilliant guy, really helped build the company from. Park. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. Jonathan Park. Yeah, why? What's his sister's name? Alex stared at her. Jessica. Jessica Park. But that's just a coincidence. There are no coincidences anymore. Maria sat down on the bed, suddenly feeling exhausted. Alex, we've been played. Both of us, for years. Jonathan has been using your company to manipulate mine, feeding me information and opportunities that would eventually lead to tonight. But why? What does he gain from destroying his own sister? He doesn't just destroy Jessica. He destroys us, takes control of both our companies, and becomes one of the most powerful people in tech and finance. Maria's voice was getting stronger as the pieces fell into place. Jessica was expendable. A sacrificial lamb to make the revenge look authentic. Alex's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. The name on the screen, Jonathan Park. Don't answer it, Maria said. I have to. If I don't, he'll know we figured it out. Alex, if I'm right about this, your partner has been planning your destruction for almost a decade. He's not going to let us walk away just because we figured out his game. But Alex was already answering the phone. Jonathan, thank God. I've been trying to understand what's happening. Alex, where are you? Jonathan's voice was calm, concerned, exactly what a worried business partner should sound like. The FBI raided our offices. They are saying you've been involved in some kind of massive fraud scheme. I'm at the Meridian Hotel. Jonathan, I didn't do any of this. Someone's been using our systems. I know. I've been going through our security logs. Alex, I think your assistant may have been selling information to competitors. There are transaction records that trace back to her accounts. Maria gestured frantically for Alex to put the phone on speaker. My assistant. Sarah's been with us for 3 years. She'd never. I know it's hard to believe, but the evidence is pretty damning. Look, I'm coming to get you. We need to coordinate our response before this gets any worse. Jonathan, I'm not alone. I'm with Maria Collins. Yes, I know. Alex, you need to get away from her. She's using you. The whole reunion thing, the evidence she showed you about the scholarship, it's all fabricated. Maria felt her world tilt sideways. Even now, even knowing what she knew, Jonathan's voice was so convincing, so reasonable, that she almost doubted herself. What are you talking about? Alex's voice was confused, desperate. Maria Collins is a con artist, Alex. She's been targeting wealthy tech executives for years, using elaborate revenge fantasies to get close to them and steal their companies. Tonight was supposed to be her final con. She gets you to fall for her, you give her access to your systems, and she disappears with everything. That's not true, Alex said, but Maria could hear doubt creeping into his voice. Alex, I have video footage of her meeting with federal investigators 3 months ago. She's been working with them, feeding them information about your company in exchange for immunity from prosecution for her own crimes. Maria felt like she was drowning. Everything Jonathan was saying was a lie, but it was a perfect lie, crafted to exploit every insecurity and fear Alex might have about trusting someone he barely knew. Show me the footage, Alex said quietly. I will. But first, you need to get away from her. She's dangerous, Alex. More dangerous than you know. Maria grabbed Alex's arm and shook her head violently. But she could see him wavering, see the doubt poisoning his mind. Alex, Jonathan continued, I'm in the lobby right now. Come down alone, and I'll show you everything. The footage, the financial records, the FBI cooperation agreement. Then you can decide for yourself what to believe. Alex looked at Maria, searching her face for something. Truth, lies, he didn't know what. I'll be right down. Wait, Maria said as he ended the call. Alex, please. Think about this logically. How would Jonathan have video footage of me meeting with federal investigators if he wasn't the one orchestrating this whole thing? Maybe because he's been trying to protect me from you. Or maybe because he's been planning to destroy both of us since the day you met him. Maria stood up, desperation making her voice sharp. Alex, if you go down there, he's going to kill you. Not metaphorically. Literally. You're being paranoid. Am I? Alex, we just destroyed 3 people's lives tonight. We have evidence of criminal fraud going back 15 years. We know about corporate conspiracies worth billions of dollars. Do you really think Jonathan is going to let us walk away with that knowledge? Alex stared at her for a long moment, and Maria saw the exact moment he made his choice. He didn't believe her. The seeds of doubt Jonathan had planted were too strong, too perfectly crafted. I have to know the truth, Maria. The truth is that I love you. The words came out before Maria could stop them, raw and desperate and completely honest. I know we've only had a few hours, but Alex, I love you. And if you go down there, I'm going to lose you forever. Alex stopped at the door, his hand on the handle. If you really love me, you'll understand why I have to do this. If you really love me, you'll stay. But he was already gone, the door closing behind him with the finality of a coffin lid. Maria stood alone in the hotel suite, surrounded by the wreckage of both their lives, knowing that in approximately 10 minutes, the man she loved was going to walk into a trap that would destroy him. She had 2 choices: run, disappear, try to salvage what was left of her life before Jonathan's web closed completely around her, or follow Alex into almost certain death, knowing that her only chance of saving him was to become the very thing she'd spent 15 years trying to prove she wasn't. Powerless. Maria looked around the suite one last time, then grabbed her phone and headed for the door. She'd been the victim once. She'd been the villain tonight. But she'd never been the hero. It was time to see if she still remembered how. Maria took the emergency stairwell, her heels echoing in the concrete chamber like gunshots. 15 floors down, each step bringing her closer to a confrontation that would either save Alex or destroy them both. Her phone had no signal in the stairwell, cutting her off from the outside world, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts and the sound of her own breathing. By the 10th floor, she'd made her decision. By the 5th floor, she'd accepted the consequences. By the time she reached the lobby level, Maria Collins had become someone she'd never been before, someone willing to sacrifice everything for love. She pressed her ear to the stairwell door, listening. The lobby was too quiet, none of the usual hotel sounds, no conversations, no footsteps. Jonathan had cleared it somehow, or maybe the police presence outside had driven everyone away. Either way, Maria was walking into a trap as surely as Alex was. But she'd spent 15 years learning how to be smart, calculating, strategic. Tonight, she was going to have to remember how to be brave. Maria opened the door just wide enough to see into the lobby. It was empty except for 2 figures near the elevator bank, Alex, looking lost and desperate, and a man she'd never seen before but knew instantly. Jonathan Park had the same cruel intelligence in his eyes that Jessica had always carried, but refined, perfected, made infinitely more dangerous by decades of patience and planning. They were talking in low voices, Jonathan's hand on Alex's shoulder in a gesture that looked supportive but positioned to control. Maria couldn't hear their words, but she could see Alex's posture, defeated, broken, believing every lie he was being fed. Maria slipped out of the stairwell and moved along the wall, using the lobby's marble pillars for cover. As she got closer, their conversation became audible. "Tried to warn you about her months ago," Jonathan was saying. "But you were so infatuated with the idea of some grand romance that you couldn't see what was right in front of you." "Show me the footage," Alex said, his voice hollow. "Show me proof that Maria was working with the FBI." Jonathan pulled out a tablet and swiped to a video file. Even from her hiding spot, Maria could see the screen clearly enough to recognize herself, or someone who looked exactly like her, sitting across from 2 men in suits, apparently cooperating with federal investigators. The video was perfect. Too perfect. Every angle calculated to be convincing, every gesture natural and believable. Maria realized with growing horror that Jonathan hadn't just been planning this for months. He'd been planning it for years. Long enough to create deep-fake technology sophisticated enough to fool even someone who knew her intimately. "This was recorded 3 months ago," Jonathan said. "She's been feeding them information about your company, your personal habits, your weaknesses. Everything that's happening tonight was designed to manipulate you into trusting her completely." But the scholarship documents, the evidence about Jessica. All fabricated. Maria Collins is a professional con artist, Alex. She targets successful men, creates elaborate scenarios designed to trigger their protective instincts and romantic fantasies, then bleeds them dry. Jonathan's voice carried just the right note of reluctant truth-telling. The FBI has been tracking her for years. Maria watched Alex's face crumble as he absorbed the lies. Jonathan was a master manipulator, weaving truth and fiction so seamlessly that even Maria might have believed him if she didn't know better. But she did know better. And she knew something else. Alex was about to walk into whatever final trap Jonathan had prepared, and she was the only one who could stop it. Maria stepped out from behind the pillar, her hands raised in surrender. "You're right, Jonathan," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the empty lobby. "I am a con artist. I did manipulate Alex. I did fabricate evidence against your sister." Both men spun toward her, Alex's face showing shock and betrayal, Jonathan's showing surprise and calculation. "Maria, what are you doing?" Alex's voice was raw with pain. "I'm telling the truth." Maria walked toward them slowly, keeping her hands visible. "Everything Jonathan said about me is correct. I targeted you, Alex. I researched your weaknesses, your history, your connection to Jessica. I orchestrated tonight to manipulate you into falling for me." Jonathan smiled, the expression sharp and satisfied. "Finally, some honesty." "But you left out one crucial detail," Maria continued, her eyes never leaving Alex's face. "You never explained why I would go to such elaborate lengths to con someone. What was I after? Alex's money? His company? His technology?" "All of it," Jonathan said smoothly. "She wanted everything you've built." "Then why?" Maria asked, still walking toward them. "Didn't I take it when I had the chance? Alex gave me his passwords tonight. He showed me his financial accounts. I had access to everything, and I didn't take a penny." Alex's expression shifted slightly, confusion mixing with the pain. "Because," Maria continued, "the truth is even more manipulative than Jonathan wants you to believe. I didn't target you for your money, Alex. I targeted you because I've been in love with you since high school, and I spent 15 years building a life worthy of someone like you." The words hit Alex like physical blows. "Maria, I researched you obsessively. I followed your career, your company, your success. I built my business to complement yours, acquired skills that would impress you, became someone who could stand beside you as an equal." Maria's voice grew stronger with each confession. Tonight wasn't about revenge against Jessica. It was about finally having an excuse to be in the same room as you. Jonathan's smile faltered. This wasn't the confession he'd been expecting. "So yes, I'm a con artist. Yes, I manipulated you. But not for money or power." Maria stopped walking, standing 10 feet away from both men. "I did it for love. Pathetic, obsessive, 15-year-old love that I never grew out of." "That's insane," Jonathan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Maria pulled out her phone and opened her photo gallery. "Alex, what do you see?" She turned the phone toward him, showing hundreds of photos, screenshots from his company's website, articles about his successes, pictures from his social media accounts. Years and years of digital stalking, organized and catalogued like a shrine. "You've been watching me," Alex whispered. "For 15 years. Every promotion, every interview, every public appearance. I know your favorite coffee shop, your jogging route, the restaurant where you take important business meetings." Maria's smile was sad and self-deprecating. "I even bought the apartment across the street from your office just so I could occasionally see you through the windows." Jonathan stepped forward, his calm facade finally cracking. "This is all very touching, but it doesn't change the fact that you're a criminal. The FBI evidence is fake," Maria said flatly. "Just like everything else you've created, Jonathan. Including the narrative that I'm some kind of master criminal. You have no proof." "Actually, I do." Maria held up her phone again. "This has been recording since I stepped into the lobby. Every word you've said, every lie you've told Alex, every confession you've made about orchestrating this entire scheme." Jonathan's face went white. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Maria opened her recording app, showing 20 minutes of active recording time. "Should I play back the part where you admitted to creating fabricated FBI footage? Or maybe the part where you explained how you've been manipulating Alex's company for years?" The silence that followed was electric with tension. Jonathan's mask had finally slipped, revealing the calculating predator underneath. Alex stood between them, looking like a man watching his entire world reshape itself in real time. Alex, Jonathan said carefully, she's trying to manipulate you again. Can't you see? I can see plenty. Alex's voice was cold, distant. I can see that my business partner of 8 years apparently thinks I'm stupid enough to fall for an obvious setup. I can see that you've been lying to me about Maria, about the FBI, probably about everything else. Alex, you don't understand. I understand that Maria just confessed to stalking me for 15 years, and somehow that's the most honest thing anyone's said to me all night. Alex turned to face Maria fully. Is it true? All of it? Every word? Maria's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. I know how insane it sounds. I know how pathetic it makes me. But Alex, everything I built, everything I became, it was all for you. And the revenge against Jessica was just an excuse to finally talk to you. Maria laughed, but there was no humor in it. I could have destroyed her years ago if I'd wanted to. But that would have required admitting I was still thinking about high school, still caring about people who didn't matter. So I told myself I was over it, over you, over everything. Until they gave me the perfect excuse to be in the same room as you again. Alex stared at her for a long moment, processing everything. You're telling me that you orchestrated one of the most complex corporate takedowns I've ever seen, as a pickup strategy. I'm telling you that I've spent half my life trying to become someone worthy of loving you, and the other half lying to myself about why. Maria's voice broke slightly. And now I'm about to lose you anyway because I was too much of a coward to just ask you out for coffee. Jonathan made a move toward the elevator, clearly hoping to escape while Alex and Maria were distracted. But Alex was faster, stepping into his path with the kind of quiet fury that comes from realizing you've been played for a fool. Where do you think you're going, partner? Alex, be reasonable. Even if she's telling the truth about her motives, she's still committed multiple felonies tonight. She still destroyed 3 businesses, manipulated federal investigations, using resources and information that you provided. Alex's voice was deadly calm. Funny how you had such detailed knowledge of her plans, isn't it? Almost like you were helping orchestrate them. Jonathan's composure finally cracked completely. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Maria Collins is dangerous, unstable. She's also right here, Maria interjected. And she's getting tired of being talked about in the third person. She stepped forward, putting herself between Alex and Jonathan. For the first time all night, Maria felt truly calm. Not the cold calculation she'd worn like armor, but genuine peace. The truth was finally out, all of it, even the parts that made her look pathetic and obsessive. She had nothing left to hide and nothing left to lose. Jonathan, you've spent years building this elaborate scheme to destroy your sister and steal both our companies. You manipulated Alex's business, fed me information designed to trigger my revenge fantasies, and orchestrated tonight's confrontation down to the smallest detail. Maria's voice was conversational, almost friendly. The only thing you didn't account for was that sometimes the truth is stranger than any lie you can construct. And what truth is that? Maria smiled, and for the first time all evening, it was completely genuine. That love makes people do insane things. Like spending 15 years building an empire just to impress someone. Like walking into obvious traps to save someone who doesn't trust you. Like confessing to stalking someone in front of the person who's trying to destroy you both. She turned to Alex, her expression open and vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before. Alex, I know I'm crazy. I know what I did was wrong on about 17 different levels. But I also know that Jonathan is planning to kill us both, and we have about 30 seconds before his backup arrives. As if summoned by her words, the elevators chimed softly, and the doors began to open. How did you? Jonathan started to ask. Because I've been watching you as obsessively as I've been watching Alex, Maria said simply. Did you really think you were the only one who could plan ahead? The elevator doors opened to reveal hotel security guards, not Jonathan's people, but the real ones, accompanied by FBI agents who didn't look anything like the ones in Jonathan's fabricated footage. Jonathan Park, one of the agents, called out, "You're under arrest for corporate fraud, conspiracy, and about 15 other charges we're still sorting through." As the handcuffs clicked around Jonathan's wrists, he stared at Maria with pure hatred. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? You're still a criminal. You still destroyed innocent people tonight. Maybe, Maria said quietly. But unlike you, I'm done lying about who I am and what I want. She turned to Alex one final time as the agents led Jonathan away. I know you can't trust me. I know you probably can't forgive me. But Alex, everything I told you tonight was true. Even the crazy parts. Especially the crazy parts. Alex stood in the empty lobby, watching the woman who'd turned his life upside down in the space of one evening. Maria Collins, stalker, criminal, corporate raider, and the most brutally honest person he'd ever met. Maria, he said softly. Yeah. When this is all over, when the investigations are finished and the lawyers have sorted everything out. Alex paused, searching for the right words. Would you like to get coffee? Somewhere normal, where nobody's plotting corporate espionage or psychological warfare. Maria stared at him, hardly daring to breathe. Are you asking me out? I'm asking if you'd like to try being honest with each other without the threat of federal prosecution hanging over our heads. Maria's smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. Alex Rivera, I would absolutely love to get coffee with you. Good, Alex said, moving closer to her. Because after everything that's happened tonight, I think we've earned the right to find out who we actually are when we're not trying to destroy or save each other. But even as they walked toward the exit together, Maria knew the hardest part was still coming. They'd survived Jonathan's trap, exposed his conspiracy, and maybe, possibly, found something real in the wreckage of their elaborate deceptions. Now they had to figure out how to build a life together on the foundation of the most complicated first date in history. 3 weeks later, Maria sat in a federal courthouse, watching her entire life dissected by lawyers, agents, and journalists who had no idea what they were really examining. The hearing was supposed to determine whether her actions at the reunion constituted criminal fraud or justifiable retaliation, but it had become something else entirely, a public autopsy of what happens when smart people make catastrophically stupid decisions for love. Alex sat in the gallery behind her, present for every session despite having no legal obligation to be there. His own company had been cleared of wrongdoing once the FBI understood the extent of Jonathan's manipulations, but he'd chosen to face the consequences alongside Maria anyway. It was, as he told her 3 days ago, the least he could do for someone who'd spent 15 years building a life just to impress him. Ms. Collins, the prosecutor said, approaching the witness stand where Maria had been testifying for the better part of an hour, you've admitted to corporate espionage, market manipulation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You've acknowledged that your actions destroyed 3 legitimate businesses and caused irreparable harm to multiple families. How do you justify these crimes? Maria looked out at the packed courtroom, reporters, former classmates, FBI agents, and Alex, then back at the prosecutor. For 3 weeks, her lawyer had been coaching her to express remorse, to emphasize her victimization, to paint her actions as the understandable response of someone pushed beyond their limits. But Maria was done with manipulation. Done with calculated responses. Done with being anything other than exactly who she was. I don't justify them, she said clearly. What I did was wrong. Not illegal, as your own investigation has confirmed, but morally wrong. I used my resources to destroy people who hadn't actually committed any crimes, just because they'd hurt my feelings 15 years ago. Her lawyer looked like he was about to have a heart attack. This wasn't the defense strategy they'd discussed. But, Maria continued, you're asking the wrong question. You want to know how I justify destroying Jessica Park's insurance agency, Derek Morrison's car dealership, and Rachel Kim's marketing firm. But those businesses were already failing. Jessica was cooking her books, Derek was drowning in debt, and Rachel was embezzling from clients. I didn't destroy legitimate businesses, I exposed fraudulent ones. The prosecutor shuffled his papers, clearly frustrated. That doesn't give you the right to take the law into your own hands. You're absolutely correct. It doesn't. Maria's voice was steady, calm. But it also doesn't make me a criminal. What makes me a criminal, or rather, what should make me a criminal, is what I was willing to do to Alex Rivera. The courtroom fell silent. This wasn't in any of the legal filings or witness statements. Your Honor, Maria said, turning to address the judge directly, I'd like to amend my testimony. There's something I haven't told the court, something that's far worse than anything I did to my former classmates. Ms. Collins, her lawyer hissed, don't. I stalked Alex Rivera for 15 years, Maria said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent courtroom. I researched his personal life, his business practices, his daily routines. I bought property near his office specifically to watch him. I manipulated market conditions to ensure our companies would be forced to interact. Everything I've built, every decision I've made since high school, was designed to eventually bring me into his orbit. The prosecutor looked like Christmas had come early. Are you confessing to additional crimes, Ms. Collins? I'm confessing to being a stalker. A pathetic, obsessive, borderline psychotic stalker who spent half her adult life building an elaborate fantasy around a man who didn't even remember her name. Maria's laugh was sharp and self-deprecating. But here's the thing that nobody in this courtroom understands. Alex Rivera is sitting in that gallery right now because he chooses to be here. Not because I manipulated him, not because he's still being deceived, but because somehow, impossibly, my pathetic obsession turned into something real. She turned in her chair to look directly at Alex, her expression open and vulnerable. 3 weeks ago, I told this man that I'd stalked him for 15 years, destroyed 3 businesses to get his attention, and orchestrated an elaborate revenge scheme as an excuse to spend one evening with him. And instead of running away screaming, he asked me out for coffee. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. This was better than any soap opera. Your Honor, Maria continued, still looking at Alex. I'm not asking for leniency because I was bullied. I'm not asking for understanding because I was wronged. I'm asking for the chance to prove that sometimes the worst things we do lead us to the best versions of ourselves. Ms. Collins, the judge said sternly, this is highly irregular. So is spending 15 years becoming worthy of someone's love without them knowing you exist. Maria finally turned back to face the court. Your Honor, I committed corporate espionage. I manipulated financial markets. I destroyed people's livelihoods for personal reasons. But I also exposed 3 different fraud schemes, helped the FBI uncover a massive conspiracy, and proved that sometimes the most elaborate lies reveal the deepest truths. The prosecutor looked frustrated. What exactly are you asking the court to do, Ms. Collins? I'm asking you to sentence me appropriately for what I actually did wrong. Maria's voice grew stronger. Not for being a stalker, that's between me and Alex, and he's already forgiven me. Not for exposing criminals, that's what you should have been doing all along. Sentence me for choosing revenge over justice, for prioritizing my personal satisfaction over doing what was right. And what would that sentence be? Maria smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it was completely genuine. Community service. Specifically, helping other victims of corporate fraud navigate the legal system to get justice the right way. Make me use my skills to help people instead of hurting them. The judge leaned back in his chair, clearly intrigued despite himself. Ms. Collins, are you representing yourself now? No, Your Honor. I'm representing the truth. Maria glanced at her lawyer, who looked like he was considering new career options. My lawyer wants me to minimize my actions, claim victimization, and hope for sympathy. But the truth is that I'm guilty of exactly one thing. Being so terrified of rejection that I spent 15 years building an elaborate castle of lies instead of just asking someone out. That's not a crime, Ms. Collins. No, but it should be. Do you have any idea how much emotional damage you can do when you're smart enough to manipulate people but too cowardly to be honest with them? Maria's voice carried a note of genuine regret. I spent 15 years turning myself into someone I thought Alex would love, instead of finding out if he could love who I actually was. She stood up suddenly, causing a stir among the court officers. Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness. Ms. Collins, you can't just. Alex Rivera. I want Alex Rivera to testify about what it's like to be the target of an elaborate 15-year manipulation campaign disguised as a love story. The prosecutor objected, the defense attorney looked panicked, and the judge called for order. But Alex was already standing up in the gallery. Your Honor, I'd like to testify. This is highly irregular, the judge said, but Maria could see curiosity winning over procedure. So is everything else about this case, Alex replied, walking toward the witness stand. 5 minutes later, Alex was sworn in and facing a courtroom full of people who had no idea what they were about to hear. Mr. Rivera, Maria said, acting as her own cross-examiner. How long have you known that I was stalking you? About 2 years, Alex said calmly. The courtroom exploded. Maria's lawyer put his head in his hands. The prosecutor looked like he'd just won the lottery. You knew. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. My security team noticed surveillance patterns around my office and home. When we investigated, we found that Maria Collins had been conducting what appeared to be industrial espionage for years. Alex's voice was matter-of-fact, professional. We also discovered that she'd never actually accessed any proprietary information, never attempted to infiltrate our systems, and never used her surveillance for competitive advantage. Then why didn't you report it? Alex smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. Because I remembered Maria Collins from high school. And I remembered spending 4 years watching her from across the cafeteria, wanting to talk to her but being too much of a coward to approach someone so far out of my league. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. "Mr. Rivera," the prosecutor interjected, "are you saying you were also stalking Ms. Collins?" "I'm saying I was a teenage boy with a crush on the smartest girl in school, who was too intimidated by her intelligence and too concerned about my social status to risk rejection." Alex looked directly at Maria. "And when my security team told me that same brilliant woman had spent 15 years watching me from a distance, I realized that maybe we'd both been too scared to reach out." "So you knew about my obsession for 2 years?" Maria's voice was shaky. "I knew about your surveillance. I didn't know about your feelings until 3 weeks ago." Alex's expression grew tender. "Maria, do you have any idea what it's like to discover that someone you've admired from afar has been admiring you right back? That the smartest, most formidable woman you've ever known has been just as scared and just as stupid about love as you have?" Maria felt tears starting to form. "Alex, when you confessed to stalking me, to building your entire life around someone you barely knew, do you know what my first thought was?" Alex leaned forward. It wasn't horror or disgust or fear. It was relief. Because finally, I wasn't the only one who'd been carrying around an impossible crush for 15 years. The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, this is turning into a romantic comedy, not a criminal proceeding." "Actually," the judge said, "this is turning into the most honest testimony I've heard in 20 years on the bench. Continue, Mr. Rivera." "Maria, you think you're a stalker. You think you're obsessive and pathetic and crazy." Alex's voice grew stronger. "But you know what you actually are. You're someone who decided what she wanted and spent 15 years making herself worthy of it. You're someone who saw a goal and achieved it through intelligence, determination, and sheer force of will. I destroyed people's lives. You exposed criminals and fell in love. Not necessarily in that order." Alex stood up in the witness box. "Maria, you asked this court to sentence you for choosing revenge over justice. But that's not what you did. You chose truth over lies, courage over fear, and love over safety." He stepped down from the witness stand and walked toward Maria, ignoring the protests of court officers. "Maria Collins, you are the most terrifyingly honest person I have ever met. You confessed to federal crimes to save me from someone I trusted. You admitted to 15 years of obsession to prove you weren't manipulating me. You've destroyed your own defense strategy just to make sure I understand exactly who you are and what you want." He stopped directly in front of her. "And what you want is me. Not my money, not my company, not my social status. Just me. Exactly as I am. Alex, we're in the middle of a federal courthouse. I don't care." Alex dropped to one knee, and the entire courtroom gasped. "Maria Collins, you spent 15 years becoming someone worthy of my love. Will you marry me so I can spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of yours?" Maria stared at him, her mind completely blank. "Are you proposing to me in federal court?" "I'm proposing to you in the one place where you can't lie, can't manipulate, and can't pretend to be anyone other than exactly who you are." Alex's smile was radiant. "I'm proposing to the woman who just confessed to multiple federal crimes rather than let me think she was someone she wasn't." Maria looked around the courtroom, at the reporters frantically taking notes, at the prosecutor who looked like he was questioning his career choices, at the judge who was trying not to smile. "Alex, this is insane. So is stalking someone for 15 years. So is building a billion-dollar company to impress someone. So is everything we've done since the day we met." Alex pulled out a ring, when had he gotten a ring, and held it up. "Maria, will you marry me?" Maria looked at the ring, at Alex's hopeful face, at the courtroom full of people waiting for her answer. Then she started laughing. Not the bitter, calculated laugh she'd perfected over the years, but pure, joyful, slightly hysterical laughter. "Alex Rivera," she said when she could finally speak, "you are asking me to marry you in federal court, in front of FBI agents, while I'm potentially facing criminal charges for stalking you. Is that a yes?" Maria looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the fantasy she'd built up over 15 years, but the reality. A man brave enough to stand by her through federal investigations, honest enough to admit his own obsessions, and crazy enough to propose in the middle of a criminal proceeding. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge banged his gavel for order but couldn't hide his smile. The prosecutor threw his hands up in defeat. And Maria Collins, who had spent 15 years building elaborate lies to hide her truth, finally understood what it meant to be completely, utterly, impossibly honest. "Your Honor," Alex said, helping Maria to her feet, "I'd like to request that the court postpone sentencing until after our wedding." "Mr. Rivera, that's not how the legal system works." "With respect, Your Honor, nothing about this case has worked the way the legal system is supposed to work." Alex grinned. "Besides, Maria's going to need time to plan a wedding. And knowing her, it's going to be the most elaborately perfect wedding in history." Maria laughed again, feeling lighter than she had in 15 years. "Alex, I've already planned our wedding. I've had the details worked out since I was 19. "Of course you have," Alex said, kissing her forehead. "That's what I love about you. You're absolutely insane, but you're insane with purpose." "Is that what love is?" Maria asked, looking around at the chaos they'd created. "Being insane with purpose." "Among other things," Alex said, taking her hand. "But mostly, it's being brave enough to tell the truth, even when the truth makes you look crazy." "In that case," Maria said, squeezing his hand, "I have 15 years of truth to catch up on." "We have time," Alex said. "We have the rest of our lives." And as they walked out of the federal courthouse together, past reporters and FBI agents and the wreckage of their elaborate deceptions, Maria Collins finally understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not revenge. Not justice. Not even love, exactly. Just the courage to be exactly who she was, with someone brave enough to love her anyway. 6 months after the federal courthouse proposal that broke the internet, Maria stood in the bridal suite of the Meridian Hotel, the same hotel where their story had reached its crisis point, adjusting her wedding dress and trying not to laugh at the beautiful absurdity of it all. The dress was perfect, of course. She'd designed it 15 years ago during a particularly pathetic phase of her obsession, sketching wedding gowns in the margins of her business school notebooks while dreaming about a future that had seemed impossible. Now, wearing that same design brought to life by the best couturier in New York, Maria marveled at how the most embarrassing parts of her past had somehow become the foundation of her happiness. "You know," said Amanda Foster, who was serving as Maria's maid of honor in what had to be the strangest redemption arc in wedding history, "when I helped Jessica forge those scholarship documents, I never imagined it would eventually lead to the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen." Maria looked at Amanda in the mirror, seeing not the broken teacher who'd confessed in her office, but the woman who'd found the courage to testify against Jonathan Park and rebuild her life from scratch. Amanda's teaching license had been restored. She'd written a best-selling book about facing the consequences of past mistakes, and she'd become an advocate for bullying victims. "Amanda, do you ever regret it? Not the forgery. I know you regret that. But do you ever regret that it all worked out this way?" Amanda considered the question seriously. "I regret the harm we caused you. I regret the years you lost, the pain you carried. But Maria, if I'm being completely honest, I think you're exactly where you were always meant to be. Maybe we were just the obstacles you had to overcome to become who you really are. That's either very wise or complete bullshit. Can't it be both?" Maria laughed, the sound echoing in the elegant suite. "I suppose it can. After everything that's happened, I'm willing to believe that the universe has a very twisted sense of humor." A soft knock interrupted them. Priya, who had somehow managed to avoid federal prosecution and was now the maid of honor coordinator, peeked her head in. "Maria, Alex is asking if you're ready. Also, there are approximately 300 reporters outside. The FBI director sent a congratulatory bouquet, and Derek Morrison is crying in the lobby." "Derek's here." Maria was genuinely surprised. He insisted on coming. Something about wanting to apologize in person and thank you for saving his family from bankruptcy. Priya grinned. "Apparently, when you forced him to sell the dealership, the new owners hired him as a manager at twice his old salary with none of the financial stress." Maria shook her head, still amazed by the unintended consequences of her revenge. Derek's life had actually improved dramatically once he'd been freed from the burden of running a failing business he'd never been qualified to manage. Rachel Kim had parlayed her court-ordered community service into a legitimate nonprofit organization that helped small businesses avoid the financial mistakes she'd made. Even Jessica Park had found unexpected redemption. Her arrest had led to therapy. Her therapy had led to genuine self-reflection, and she was now working as a counselor for troubled teenagers. "What about Jessica? Is she?" "She sent a card," Priya said softly. "She wanted you to know that she's proud of who you've become, and she's sorry it took her so long to become someone worth being proud of." Maria felt her eyes start to water and immediately stopped herself. She'd spent too much on makeup to ruin it now with sentimental tears. "All right," she said, taking a deep breath. "I think it's time to marry my stalker." "He was your stalker too," Amanda pointed out. "You were mutually stalking each other." "The most romantic love story of the 21st century," Maria said with a grin. The ceremony was held in the hotel's rooftop garden, overlooking the city where both Maria and Alex had built their empires while dreaming about each other from a distance. The guest list was a bizarre mixture of tech executives, federal agents, former classmates, and journalists who were still trying to understand how a high school reunion had turned into the most famous love story of the decade. David Liu, the boy who'd tried to warn Maria about Jessica's plans, served as Alex's best man. He'd spent the last 6 months writing a book about the psychology of bystanders and had become an unexpected advocate for intervention programs in schools. His speech at the bachelor party had made Alex cry, something about how love requires the courage to be uncomfortable, to risk rejection, to choose involvement over safety. As Maria walked down the aisle, she saw familiar faces in the crowd. Her former employees, who'd been rehired by the companies she'd restructured and were now thriving under better management. FBI agents who'd become friends during the investigation. Reporters who'd covered their story and found themselves unexpectedly moved by the power of radical honesty. But mostly, she saw Alex, standing at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, watching her approach with the kind of wonder that suggested he still couldn't quite believe this was real. When she reached him, he leaned down to whisper in her ear, "You look exactly like I imagined you would 15 years ago." "You imagined our wedding 15 years ago?" "Every detail," Alex admitted, "right down to the dress. Although in my fantasies, we met under normal circumstances, like at a coffee shop or a bookstore. Instead of corporate espionage and federal court. Our way was more interesting." The ceremony itself was surprisingly traditional, given everything that had led to it. They'd written their own vows, of course, because after everything they'd been through, generic promises felt insufficient. "Maria," Alex said, his voice carrying clearly across the rooftop, "I promise to love you not despite your obsessive tendencies, but because of them. I promise to appreciate the 15 years you spent becoming someone worthy of my love, and to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of yours. I promise to never again be too much of a coward to tell you the truth, even when the truth is embarrassing or complicated or makes me look like an idiot." Maria's vows were characteristically direct. "Alex, I promise to use my powers for good instead of revenge. I promise to channel my obsessive energy into building a life with you instead of stalking you from a distance. And I promise that if I ever plan another elaborate scheme involving corporate espionage and psychological warfare, I'll include you from the beginning instead of trying to manipulate you into compliance." The crowd laughed, but Maria could see that Alex understood the deeper promise beneath the humor. She was choosing partnership over control, collaboration over manipulation, trust over fear. When they kissed, sealing their impossible union, the applause was thunderous. But Maria barely heard it. For the first time in 15 years, she was exactly where she belonged, with exactly the person she was meant to be with, having become exactly who she was supposed to be. The reception was held in the same ballroom where Maria had destroyed Jessica's life 6 months earlier. But instead of revenge and humiliation, the room was filled with joy, laughter, and the kind of celebration that comes from watching two people find their way to each other despite seemingly impossible odds. During the father-daughter dance, Maria's father had flown in from California, still somewhat bewildered by his daughter's sudden fame but proud of the woman she'd become. Alex was approached by a young woman with a notebook and a determined expression. "Mr. Rivera? I'm Sarah Collins. I'm a journalist with the Times. I've been following your story since the courthouse proposal. Are you related to Maria?" "No relation. But I wanted to ask you something. Your wife just gave up $1 billion empire to start a nonprofit that helps fraud victims. You restructured your entire company to focus on ethical technology instead of profit maximization. Do you ever regret that the truth cost you so much?" Alex looked across the dance floor at Maria, who was laughing with Amanda about something while their respective fathers tried to figure out how their daughters had ended up in such an elaborate love story. "Sarah, can I tell you something that didn't make it into any of the news coverage?" "Of course." "The night Maria confessed to stalking me, she also offered to disappear. She said she'd leave the country, give up her company, start over somewhere else if it would make things easier for me." Alex's voice grew quiet. "She was prepared to sacrifice everything she'd built rather than let her obsession destroy my life. But you didn't let her." I didn't let her because I realized something that night. Maria had spent 15 years becoming someone extraordinary, not for herself, but for love. How could I do anything less than spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that kind of devotion? Sarah scribbled notes frantically. So you don't regret the financial losses? Alex laughed. What financial losses? Maria and I are starting a new company together. We're going to use everything we learned about corporate manipulation and psychological warfare to help people protect themselves from predators like Jonathan Park. We're going to make more money than we ever did separately, and we're going to do it by telling the truth instead of hiding it. A company built on radical honesty. A marriage built on radical honesty. The company is just the side effect. Alex smiled as Maria caught his eye and winked. Sarah, do you want to know the real moral of this story? Absolutely. The most elaborate lies we tell are the ones we tell ourselves. Maria told herself she was building a business empire when she was really building a love story. I told myself I was protecting myself from rejection when I was really just being a coward. Jessica told herself she was protecting her status when she was really just terrified of being ordinary. And the truth? The truth is that love makes everyone a little crazy. The difference is whether you're crazy enough to be honest about it. Alex looked back at Maria, who was now slow dancing with her father while crying happy tears. Maria was crazy enough to confess to 15 years of stalking in federal court. I was crazy enough to propose in the middle of criminal proceedings. That's not a cautionary tale, that's a blueprint. As the evening wound down, Maria and Alex found themselves alone on the hotel's rooftop, looking out over the city where they'd built their separate empires while dreaming of each other. So, Alex said, loosening his tie and sitting on the ledge overlooking the street, we're married now. We are, Maria agreed, sitting beside him and resting her head on his shoulder. How does it feel? Terrifying. Wonderful. Completely insane. Alex wrapped his arm around her. How does it feel to finally have everything you spent 15 years working toward? Maria was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Like the beginning instead of the ending. The beginning of what? The beginning of finding out who we are when we're not trying to become someone else. Maria looked up at him. Alex, for 15 years, I was trying to become someone worthy of your love. Now I get to find out who I am when I already have it. And who do you think that is? Maria smiled, the expression soft and genuine and completely free of calculation. I have no idea. But I'm excited to find out. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below them. Tomorrow, they would start their new company, begin their life together, and continue the work of becoming better versions of themselves. But tonight, they were just two people who had found each other despite overwhelming odds and their own spectacular capacity for self-deception. Maria, Alex said softly. Yeah. Thank you for being crazy enough to stalk me for 15 years. Thank you for being brave enough to love me anyway. Maria. Yeah. I think our kids are going to have the most insane bedtime stories. Maria laughed, the sound carrying across the rooftop and out into the night. Alex Rivera, if you think our love story is crazy, wait until you see what we build together. And as they sat overlooking the city where their impossible love story had finally become reality, Maria Collins and Alex Rivera began planning their next elaborate scheme. This time, for building a life together that would be even more improbable and beautiful than the one that had brought them together. After all, they'd spent 15 years proving that the most extraordinary things happen when ordinary people are brave enough to be honest about who they really are and what they really want. Now they had the rest of their lives to see what other impossible things they could make possible. What did this story teach you about the power of radical honesty in love and life? How far would you go to become worthy of someone's love? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.